Welcome to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show, empowering your real estate investing with techniques, opportunities, and information, minus the BS and sales pitches. Now, please welcome the host of the Investor Empowerment Series, Joe Mueller, from the Tough as Nails Investment Syndicate. Joe Mueller.
Welcome back to the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. This is show number 9. Today's guest is Mark Skowron of Festival Properties. Mark is an experienced wholesaler from the Chicago area who discusses virtual wholesaling, reverse wholesaling, and the importance of establishing a buyer and seller marketing list. This is another show you don't want to miss.
Please take a moment to hear from our featured sponsors.
Today's episode is sponsored by Jordan Capital Finance, offering lucrative rates on fix and flip line of credit loans, as well as opportunities for buy and hold investors. Please visit tanisgroupllc.com/funding for more information. Pathway Financial offers 0% interest on unsecured lines of credit loans for all types of real estate investing. Please visit tanisgroupllc.com/funding for more information.
Thanks for having me on, Joe. Maybe a year now, I think we've known each other. Or maybe longer, a little bit longer.
Bought a deal from you like last July, and I think we were kind of in cahoots before that.
That's right. And then we talked a little bit before that. So, yeah, I mean, my background is I've been in the game like 5 years now. And so, like, for me, I just kind of start out just probably how a lot of other people start. They say, hey, man, you know, real estate's out there. It's the fastest way to wealth, this and that. And so, you know, like when I started at the time, there wasn't as much like readily information as there is there now, I think, with Google and everything, and all these podcasts and everything. So I kind of just figured it out on my own. I mean, I'm one of those that like, hey, just give me the basic idea. I'll figure it out on the fly. You know, I'll make some mistakes and I'll figure it out. So I kind of, you know, you got to go through that process. So I think, you know, the first year was challenging in the sense of trying to, you know, understand human dynamics, what to say to sellers, how to build rapport with sellers, buyers, you know, finding those different sides of it. So what I do and what I started out was just wholesaling, Joe. You know, just like, so the first deal that we did is my typical deal, right? Out of, you know, I've moved on to rehabbing and some landlord deals, owning some, but you know, let's say out of 10 deals, 8 of them will be wholesale, and that's like my foundation, right? And I think, you know, for anyone listening out there, you should, whether it's wholesaling, whatever it is, you know, if you're rehabbing or if you're a realtor, listings, whatever it is, you got to build that like foundation of cash flow, of revenue. And so for me, that's what wholesaling was. So once you kind of get that dialed in, then you can kind of move on to other things, you know, whether it's rehabbing, landlording, all this other kind of stuff. But so it's important to, you know, what I always say is don't yourself become a motivated seller, right? So if you're rehabbing a house or two and you don't have any money coming in, you know, you're not closing deals or listings or whatever it is, then you might become a motivated seller if you run out of money, you know? So that's the last thing you want to do. So, you know, that's how I learned, is kind of just building that foundation of revenue, of figuring out what to do, what to say. The funny thing is it's very simple as far as the principles. It's not easy, right? You got to like understand human dynamics, like how to get people to agree to your price, how to get a buyer to agree to your price, you know? So there's a lot of people say it's easy. It really isn't. It's simple though. You know, you just got to find a motivated seller, which can be challenging, but I mean, that's really what you got to find, either from another wholesaler where you do a co-wholesale deal, or go direct to seller and then match that up with a cash buyer. So, I mean, to answer the question, yeah, starting out, I mean, I would just get anything that I could under a contract. So that means pretty much in the hood, right? So I got a lot of bad properties in the hood, and I just didn't know what I was doing. So I try to sell these deals, not to landlords, but to like rehabbers, thinking like, hey man, you know, these guys say they're buying in this area. And this is not that far from their area, so let me try to sell them. But, you know, so obviously they would say no, but I would keep calling them once a day, sometimes more than that, and just keep building rapport and rapport and rapport. So sometimes they'd get annoyed, but they're like, man, this guy's really working. You know, this guy's really trying. So eventually I'd find him a deal, you know, and like to this day, that's still how we operate. I have no shyness when it comes to presenting a deal to anyone, you know, like, hey man, take a look at this. I don't feel, they say no. A good buyer will say, no, thanks, you know, thanks for the opportunity, but please keep them coming. A non-pro will say like, no man, why are you sending me this garbage?
Right.
Because once in a while it might be garbage, or maybe he doesn't like it, he or she doesn't like it. But, you know, the whole key, you know, what I would say even with a good buyer is they want your property, they want your listings, right? Typically, not all the time, but they're really good at rehabbing. or rehabbing analysis, maybe they're not as good as marketing for the properties, right? That's why they hire the realtors, they have us, that kind of thing. So you got to present yourself as a resource, usually like an off-market leg, right? You already might have a realtor like you, Joe, working for them to bring them deals. How you present it to the buyers, like, hey, listen, you already have Joe, and I might find some on-market MLS deals for you, but what I really focus and specialize is off-market deals, right? So I can be that leg of yours, Mr. Buyer. So it's a lot of contacts. It's building rapport with the buyers, familiarity with them. So that's really how I started. It's just like building my buyers list. I would call hundreds, 200s, like all day. And then just building that rapport, and then basically what they buy, what area they buy, and then you, in essence, go shopping for them, right? So that's literally as easy or as simple as it is. Like I said, it's not easy because you really got to work. A lot of people actually, the funny thing in this game, if you differentiate yourself, you just got to work hard. If you work hard, diligently and smart, you'll make it. That's really what it takes.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, as you were talking, I was thinking about how I think I've seen something in the past from you regarding reverse wholesaling. Is that kind of what you were describing, where you're kind of finding out what the buyer wants, and then you're looking for that product out there and bringing it back to them?
100%. So I realized early on, because I was the other way, right? So I would find the sellers first. I get 10 properties in the hood. I couldn't sell them. I did everything I could, right? Call, skip trace the buyers, put up signs, Craigslist, Facebook, RIAs, everything, right? And so I just took a step back, and I'm like, I get these 10. I think they're priced well, but you know what? Let me listen to the feedback here. So then I almost kind of like switched it up to interviewing the buyers, right? So you figure, okay, let me just instead of me forcing a property on them, let me ask them what they're going to buy, what area, range, bed, bath count, that kind of thing. So then that gives you two things. It gives you confidence, because then you really know like what area, what number, right? What price you have to be at. Then you can just reverse yourself, right? So, hey, I know Joe's got to be at 100, so I got to be at least 95, or whatever it is, anything underneath that.
Sure.
So then that gives you confidence when dealing with the seller to negotiate the deal, And then it just builds more confidence with the buyer once you start bringing them deals in their area, right? In their intended area. Then they really perk up and they're really interested.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Do you want to walk through a quick buyer interview with me? I know you know a little bit about me, but maybe the listeners can benefit from hearing how the process might work if you run into them at a RIA meeting, let's say.
Yeah, sure. So like one of the best questions is, we go through, hey, Joe, nice to meet you. My name is Mark, blah, 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 blah. Hey, what brings you here? So then if I ask you like, hey, Joe, what brings you?
I'm an investor. I'm a landlord. I'm trying to find some more properties out there, the Fox Valley area or northwest suburbs of Chicago. And I just thought I'd come here to try to meet some new people and maybe find some new deals.
Beautiful. Hey, Joe, yeah, I might be a great resource for you because, I rehab myself. I got a couple of rentals. I just have good marketing going with a good team. So we just get a lot of deals here, Joe. I'm not able to rehab them all. So,
sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Tell me about the last deal that you did, just so I kind of know like what numbers and what, you told me your area, but just go through like your last deal that you did just so I can know what I can present to you.
Sure. I'm working on 3 right now, but the most recent one that I acquired, and I haven't actually started rehabbing yet, is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath property in Carpentersville. I purchased at $70,000, needs about $10,000 worth of work. It was actually owned by another investor who purchased it back during the crash in like 2011 or 12 when everything was going for cheap. He bought the property for $40,000, and he actually put a bunch of money into it with the intent to flip it. So he kind of did like a house hack, actually. He moved into the property. He put up, crown molding and new flooring and re-drywalled the 3 bedrooms and the bathroom, redid the entire bath, and then he kind of stopped when he got to like the living room and the kitchen. So right now the house is like 75% done. It basically is gutted. The kitchen is gutted. The family room needs flooring and needs some couple items on the exterior, but it's got a nice 2-car garage, which I like. It should be worth, when I'm done with it, probably about $130,000, maybe a little bit more, and it should probably rent for about $1,350 a month. That's my bread and butter deal right there.
Beautiful. Cool. Yeah, let me see if I've got, I might have one coming up in the next couple of weeks in that area.
Oh, yeah?
So let me backtrack real quick. See, it's as simple as that. So like one quick question. Hey, tell me about where you buy. And then so literally you gave me everything. Hey, I bought it at 70. I'm going to put in 10. It's 3-bed, 1-bath, 2-car garage. It'll, sell for 130 or rent for 1,300. So like for me, I'm thinking, okay, so I know if I find it in that area, I got to get it at least 70 or less, right? So there's my spread. I mean, it's literally, you're right. I mean, we can take it as far as you want. Do you need a basement? Do you need this,
Sure.
this? But literally, if there was just one question, so that's like probably the best qualifying question I've ever had. I'll usually ask that and shut up. No, because so you know what you're doing, Joe, but like, how it is at a RIA,
Right.
let's say, I don't know, maybe half of them aren't doing anything, but
Right.
they'll pretend that they are. So
Sure.
within 10 seconds, I'll try to say, hey, tell me about the last deal that you did.
Right.
And then oftentimes you can tell if they mumble or stutter, then they're like, okay, we're just starting out, or they'll just say, hey, I still haven't done a deal. Or tell me about the last deal you did. What'd you say? Hey, I got 3, So it's like, you see what I'm saying? So if you ask that to me or you, it's like, oh my God, what's the last deal?
Right.
I got 15 I'm working on now. Let me tell you about the last one versus, I'm thinking about starting. So, I mean, I would ask that like within 10 seconds of meeting someone, because it's a great way to kind of like filter out, right? Who's doing deals and who's not.
And that's a great point about the filtering, and it's a great way to kind of break the ice at some of these RIA meetings as well, because obviously that I host my own, and then I attend
Yes.
I attend a few throughout the month, sometimes once or twice a week. And you're right, there's almost an awkward moment after you meet someone and shake their hand and kind of say something like, what do you do? But a better way maybe to handle that is saying something like you just said, like, so tell me about the last deal you were involved in, or tell me about the last property you bought. So that's a great point for me as a learning point, and then also for the listeners. That's awesome.
Yeah, because it goes both ways, right? Because then like with that question, it's a 2-prong. So you find out like, your buying criteria, price, all that kind of stuff, which you just told me. If that is, then that's good, right? And then, but if not, then you can find out really quick. I'm not saying that you're going to end it short, if you said, well, I'm just starting out, but it just changes your level of expectation and conversation. That's all. Like with you, it's okay, cool, let's put deals together. If someone says, well, I'm still working on my first deal, then okay, the conversation for me in my head switches like, all right, let me see what I can do to help this person with resources, with, then it would be like, hey man, what's your biggest challenge? Do you not have buyers, or you just need product? That kind of thing.
Sure. I know you brought a deal out to, I mean, you're constantly marketing out properties. I know that. I'm getting a lot of emails from you. Sometimes I'm getting text messages where you're directly contacting me saying, hey man, I got one over here. Are you interested? I mean, that's probably one of the main reasons why we communicate so much, is because you're constantly, hitting me up, we'll call it. And it feels personal. I don't know if it is. I don't know if you've got like an automated text system, or, I'm sure the emails are automated, but I just, I feel like that's another great point to bring up is, when you're working with, as an investor, if you've got a network of wholesalers that you're working with, stick with the ones that you can actually communicate with and are out there doing deals and know how to get those price points, what you're looking for. So I just want to commend you on that, because I know we've only done a couple of deals together, but the ones we've done have all been exactly what I was looking for. So I think that's a great point too.
Yeah, thanks for that. And no, I think, Joe, that's a great learning point too, is so 2 things there that like you got to constantly be, whether it's a text blast, email blast, and I always vary it. You're right. So it's a variety of everything. Sometimes it's an email blast, one-on-one text, one-on-one email, one-on-one phone call. Like I know if it's something in your wheelhouse, I'll probably just give you a quick call, or like, well, probably a text like, hey, Joe, take a look at this one before I blast it out. Because I just know that, hey, he's purchased here before. It was a good process. I know where he buys.
Sure.
So it's just constantly being, like in the forefront, and then, so the other thing is like early on, what I didn't get is I just like, for me, I like email and text, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to think, if you're a wholesaler, it's irrelevant what you like. How do your buyers like to be contacted, right? So that's why for me, I try to, like for you, I know it's text or email, right? I'm not going to call you, or you're not going to call me, because I don't like talking on the phone either, right?
Right,
like,
right.
If it's something quick, dude, just text or email me.
Yep.
But some people love talking on the phone, so those people I'll call. So the point is, like just like in any business, right? Worry about your customer, your buyer. How do they want to be contacted? If they want to be called, call them. If they want to be text them. So that's why I just try to vary it up and find out, hey, what's your preferred source, Joe? How do you like to be contacted? And then you just got to vary it up. If you just do like a text blast every day or an email blast every day and that's it, people are going to your buyers are going to get banner blindness, right? Where they'll just tune out of the message.
So that's pretty cool, Mark. I mean, I appreciate the way you're handling the customer service end, because again, I think we've built a relationship over the last year or so based on, those communications and the text messages. And it does give me a little bit of a warm, fuzzy feeling when I see a text message from you come over. It's like opening a little present, because all of a sudden there's a property you're presenting to me saying, hey man, this one's not out there yet. I haven't put it out on email. I know it's somewhere you like to buy. Are you interested? And I know I've looked at a bunch of the properties you've sent out that way, and I think both of us have worked through a couple together where I've been like, well, this one's probably not going to work, based on what we're seeing. But, when it does, it does.
Yeah. But see, I mean, you're a great buyer, Joe, honestly, because for you, it's like, it's a bunch of at-bats. Think about it, right? Like, hey, I just want opportunities, right? So for me, it's like, hey, I'm just going to present an at-bat. You take a look at it, right? Sure. So you handle it right. Even if you don't want it, you're like, hey, man, thanks, but, here's why, or just, hey, it's not going to work. And I don't feel offended at all. I'm like, all right, cool, next one, Sure. So I commend you on that, because a lot of buyers sometimes will get, oh, man, why are you sending me this for? I don't want this, or whatever it is. But a minority. I'll say a minority, but.
Right. Okay. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the marketing side. I mean, you don't have to give away all your secrets or anything, but as a wholesaler, the way you are, the way you're managing your business, what type of marketing are you actually doing to find these motivated sellers?
It's both, right? I mean, as a wholesaler, you got to find the sellers and then the cash buyers. So on the sell side, what you can do if you're starting out, honestly, is just link up with a wholesaler, trusted wholesaler that's out there, and say, hey, what deals do you got? I don't know, I'm kind of just starting out, but I'm willing to work pretty hard. How can I help you, right? What deals do you have that I can help you co-wholesale, right? So that's a great way to get started, because then it doesn't cost you anything other than just some time and building rapport with a wholesaler, creating some goodwill. So that's a great way to start. And then finding direct to seller leads. I mean, there's so many, right? And here's the thing, I think with any business, there's not really one that I focus on. You got to try 10 and then see the 2 or 3 that work really, really well, and then try to focus on those, right? But still keep trying the other 8. But I mean, direct mail is always going to work for real estate. So even with that stuff, I mean, I can tell you what we use, but you're going to have to test it, with your own message, your own market. For me, I start out with yellow letters, pink letters, white letters, postcards, and they all work. That's the thing. I mean, they really all work. For now, I think there's just so many new investors getting in that are sending them out. So sometimes you'll get lost in the shuffle. So you're always trying to think, all right, how can I change this message around, or this font, this color? So just do direct mail. Start with whatever it is, whether it's a postcard or a letter. Monitor track your results, and then just modify. All right, let me try this wording. Let me try this color. Let's see what works better. Let me send it to this list again, right? So I think any investor, and all the top investors, every single one of them employs direct mail, right? No matter what. So always do direct mail. And then along with that, and by the way, when I say direct mail, so what you want to mail to is any kind of subset where you think there'd be some sense of motivation, right? So probate, divorce, tired out landlords, fire damage, absentee owners, out of state, in state, so there's a lot of lists that you can focus on. Houses with equity, with let's say 70% equity, empty nesters. I mean, there's so many stuff. There's so many list categories out there. So there's no like, all right, man, you do this one and you're going to get a deal. You just got to kind of try it and then monitor your results.
So just to recap, and I'm sure I'm missing something, but I heard high equity, I heard age-based, because you mentioned empty nesters, so you're talking like maybe 55 and older, or 60 and older. I heard absentee, which is going to be like out-of-state owners or landlord-type owners. And then did you mention any other ones?
Probate,
yeah, okay.
Fire damage, divorce lists, right? Yeah, so anywhere you kind of think there'd be some type of motivation. Those are, I really like mailing to absentee, because those could be a buyer or a seller. Okay. Right, because if you think about it, if you're sending it to a landlord, it could be, a motivated seller. He's like, you know what, I'm retiring, I'm getting out of the game, sure, I'll sell. Or, no, I'm not selling. Why'd you send this to me? Well, hey, man, sorry, I tell you what, are you in acquisition mode? Are you buying any units? And then they'll say, yeah, man, I'm looking for, XXX. So those I like, because it's not just a no and move on, right? Like with a probate, they're not going to be a buyer. But so like with an absentee, whether it's in state or out of state, just a landlord, it could be both, right? So.
Sure. No, that's awesome. And when you get these leads coming in, whether it's a motivated seller type lead or a buyer lead, are you currently using any type of the systems that are out there like Podio, some of these CRM computerized software platforms, or are you spreadsheets or what? Yeah, so I've used a handful of them. Honestly, for me, so Podio, Highrise, I haven't tried the new Freedom Soft quite yet. Okay. Although I hear good things just from some of the investors that I know. But really, I mean, as simple as it is, I'll just use
like an internal, so we use Get Response to track the leads, like seller emails, and then CallFire to track their phone numbers. So we'll save those lists. And then everything we just save like in a Google Doc, so we can still do like the email blasts, text blasts, phone calls. So that's really the CRM. Everything's stored in Google. And it's really, I try to keep it caveman simple. And right. I mean, it's, yeah, because I think we were just talking about that exact thing in our mastermind. It's funny. One of the investors was saying, hey, just had like a meeting where he had like 10 investors, flew out across the country. So he was saying that like they're having trouble, they're closing 1 to 2 deals a month, or they're having trouble closing 1 deal a month, but they're bragging about, well, no, I think I got this new system going and this and that. And those are all great, don't get me wrong, but I think people get distracted by the system because they think it's a be all end all. Like real estate's very simple. You just got to find motivated sellers and then find cash buyers and then link them up. So like everything else can just, if it makes it more efficient, then that's fine. But like at the end of the day, do 5 things 1,000 times, right? Versus like 1,000 things 5 times. So keep dribbling the ball. So I think, anyone listening out there, honestly, if you're really techie, find a system that works for you. That's cool. For me, the way that we're using it, I feel I have no complaints the way that it is. By the way, Get Response is an email autoresponder, where you can save people's emails, and then CallFire is a text autoresponder where you can save their cell phone numbers.
Yeah, it's like a text blasting platform. Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, you can do a voice blast, text blast.
Oh, cool.
They have all kinds of stuff on there, one-on-one, multiple calls. So literally between those and Google Doc, that's all that, for me, it works for us really well.
I totally appreciate that as well because, running the business here, we've got a couple different buckets that we're always working on. We've got REO listings and we've got investors that are buying and we've got some, we got my acquisition side and we've got a property management platform, managing my properties as well as the ones of some of our clients that are out there. I've learned that as well over the years. It's just, you can pay, a couple $100 a month for this system that you watch a couple videos on or you get a couple cool emails and you're like, wow, that seems awesome. But then when you dive into it, you're spending more time messing around with the website to try to get stuff organized than it would be just to have something on a simple spreadsheet and set yourself a reminder on your calendar and call it a day,
Yeah, it's so that 3 hours that you spent trying to figure that out, you could have found another property, another investment partner, another seller. You know what I mean? So I went through that phase too where I was testing everything, trying everything out, right? And then I realized, same thing, Joe. I was like, man, I'm spending way too much time. Let's get back to doing deals, finding sellers, finding buyers. That's it.
Keep it simple, stupid. The KISS
method.
Keep
it simple. Yeah, I like it. That's it. Yeah, I'm 100% behind that. Yep.
So why don't we talk a little bit about maybe a recent wholesale deal you've put together, or I know you said you've done some rehabbing. I'd like to hear more about, more of the specifics on something you've done recently.
Sure. So like I said, so my protocol goes like this. If a deal comes in the pipeline from seller, what I look to do right away is, all right, can I wholesale this really quick, right? So like with a contract comes in today, let's say it's in your neck of the woods, right? Carpentersville, Elgin, price makes sense. I'll just hit you up real quick. Like, hey, Joe, what do you think about this? XXX Main Street. You say yes, cool, let's do it. Let's move on.
Sure. You
say, no, it's not for me. Then, maybe I'll hit up a couple other Elgin buyers that I got. Mm-hmm. So if they say no, then I'll do a text blast for that area, right? For that contact list for buyers who buy in Kane County or Elgin or whatever it is, along with like an email blast typically.
Okay.
Wait for those results to come in. So usually like the first week, if I can't get rid of it that way with just a one-on-one text or phone call or a voice blast, email blast, then I'll look at it. Okay, is it because it's priced too high? Do I have to renegotiate with seller? Whatever it is, right? So if that's the case, then I'll do that. I'll renegotiate with seller if that's what it takes to wholesale it. If not, but I know the numbers look good, then I'll say, all right, should I, I've got a couple investors lined up. Do I just close on it and rehab it? Is it close to me, close to my contractors? So there's decisions there, right? Is it DuPage County, Northern Cook? Will it sell quick? Is it in a good area? Yes or no, right? So if that's the case, then I'll entertain that option. Or if it's cheap enough where I can just what those guys, what we call wholesale, right? Where I'll just close on it, maybe clean it out, and then just list it as is, right? Is that an opportunity, right? So, So the approach would, so comes in first week or two, can I wholesale this? If yes, for sure. If not, do I close on it, list it as is as a wholesale? Great. If that's the case, let's do that. If that still doesn't work, then let's finish out the rehab. So that's typically how that goes. It's all about whatever works for you, right? You might not have the capital. People listening might not, or maybe they have too much capital, whatever it is, right? You just got to figure out like kind of what system works for you. This has just been working really well.
Okay. How big of a factor is condition in what you're doing? I mean, when I say that, I mean, I know you've done some rougher end properties, like you said, the low end in the hood. I know you've done some, more sophisticated areas in the Chicagoland market. Is condition a factor when you're writing these contracts? Are you walking the property when you're writing these? Or are you kind of doing, hey, we've got a motivated seller, let's write up a contract on it and see what we can do with it and then renegotiate it based on what we see?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think, so that's constantly evolving. And so that I think you're going to have to know your market, right? So like right away, like when I was starting out, I would meet with every seller all the time, right? Meet them at the house, take a look at it, take pictures, bring a contractor with me, etc. Once you kind of understand the different areas and markets, and that that pretty much whatever the seller tells you is a lie about the condition of the house. If they say, yeah, it just needs a little cosmetics, pretty much needs a gut. But now, like I kind of know the markets, I know the areas, right? So I kind of know what price point my buyers are going to be at, even with like if I assume a full gut rehab, right? So what we'll do is typically ask the seller before we even go out there just to text or email us like some pictures of how it looks right now, right? Because then that'll at least, no matter what they say, right? They can say it's move-in ready, but that's all relative.
Sure.
There's always a big difference between livable and sellable, right? So I think the sellers kind of don't understand that. They think, well, I live here, everything's fine, but that's not going to sell on the MLS, for a top dollar.
Right.
So you got to like lower their expectations. So that's what we'll do. We'll get pictures first, to take a look at the extent of the rehab. I mean, if it looks decent, then I know the numbers well enough that we can send them a contract at, a little bit below what my buyers are buying.
Right.
If it's right on the cusp, then maybe we'll head out there, take a look just to verify everything. Maybe bring one of our buyers out there too to kind of like get his estimate right on what price we got to be at essentially. And
I know I've helped you out with one or two of those where you've said, you've got one that's come in, you've texted me, I'm there the next morning, for example. And I know there was one that we looked at probably, might have been back in May or June, where there was like a fire damaged property and it was at a great price to start, a lot great on the outside. You had it under contract for a good price. And then when I walked the property and met the actual seller was on site, I think I told you that. So I was talking to him and, maintaining the integrity of the fact that I knew you had the contract with him. But, just talking to him like, about the work that was needed and what he knew, because he had blueprints drawn up to rebuild this property. And it wasn't burnt to the ground, but it had a substantial amount of fire damage. And, after evaluating it, I gave you a call and I was like, yeah, man, this is not going to work at this price based on the amount of work that it needs. And, I don't mind doing that because it gives me the first crack opportunity to grab these properties if the numbers work.
Yeah, so you just said it there, and kudos to you because you're like what I strive a buyer to be, right? I mean, perfect. Like you mentioned the buyer wholesaler relationship. So I think in that situation, right? Yeah, we had it under contract, and so I just sent you out there to look at like the extent of the rehab. So the whole goal, like when I started out, I would just send the buyers there to meet with the sellers or whoever, and then they would just start talking, and then it would confuse the seller, so that I would lose deals that way. And it was my fault because I didn't manage the expectations better of the seller and of the buyer, right? So now I present it like, hey, Mr. Seller, my partner Joe's going to come look at it, just kind of, estimate repairs and overall condition,
Sure.
And that's how I present it. So then they expect your name and they know what you're doing, right?
Absolutely.
And it works both ways, right? Because it's a favor. It's like, thanks, Joe. But then also, I mean, obviously, if there's any way to make the deal work, we're going to I'm going to put it together with you, not with anyone else.
Right. There's been a handful of times I've kind of been that first guy out there on the scene, if you will. And, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it probably helps you, which ultimately helps me for the next opportunity. If it doesn't work for me on this one, I'll hopefully get the next one. But then you can, talk to the seller a little bit more, renegotiate, see if that contract is actually capable of closing at a price that's going to make sense for somebody, for you or for the next buyer, right?
Perfect. And so I think anyone listening out there, like if you're just starting out, like link up with the Joe, right? Like very experienced, big time realtor, has lots of investors, knows this stuff, knows what he's doing, but also knows the human being side, because that's really important, right? Because the whole thing, like when you're meeting with the seller, is one of the most important things is to not leave that meeting making them feel like, what the hell's wrong with that guy? Because then no, but it's not even about the real estate. That's what people don't understand. It's not about numbers or this and that. Like I try to structure like every meeting with a seller or buyer, to be like, hey man, that guy's pretty cool. He knows what he's talking about.
Right.
So there's no sense of like, what the hell is this guy talking about? I don't trust this guy. So like I'm telling you, like that is the number one thing. You coordinating a buyer to meet with the seller, your number one thing is to like, hey, you don't want to be like, don't act like a jackass, right? But like, hey, just be yourself. But you want to make sure that that they don't leave that meeting and the seller's like, yeah, listen, Mark, whoever you sent out there, I don't really trust it. I don't trust you guys. So that's what you don't want to happen.
Absolutely, and I think I do understand what you're saying, because I've been in situations as well where I've looked at other properties, either from a wholesaler, even something that's maybe hit the MLS, and you walk in the front door, and then you've got somebody else right on your tail, right? So let's say I'm investor A, Joe walks in the door, and then I've got, investor B happens to show up at the same time, and we're both in the property. And, I've always tried to be very respectful of the fact that these people are going through something, right? They're motivated, something motivates them, if they're physically on site meeting you or if they're not, so I'm not going to make any negative comments. If anything, I'll try to be positive, friendly, and, assert the fact that I'm trying to gain their trust and have, a normal conversation, maybe find common ground. Oh yeah, so you've lived in Elgin for how long? Or, whatever the situation is. Oh, I've been in this area for 10 years, et cetera, and talk about what's going on in the community, for example. And then I've had other investors that are walking in right behind me, and I've heard them, start tearing apart the condition of the house or the work that needs to be done. And, oh, look at that over there. Oh, that's not up to code. And, just examples, and that it turns people off right away just on that human element level, because they're letting you in their home, and then there you are kind of being like you said, being a jackass.
Yeah.
So I think
so
that's
there
a
it is.
great
I
point.
mean, you're a seasoned pro though, Joe. You get it. And I think so. Anyone listening, man, I mean, there's gold there, right? So if you're meeting with a seller and there's two wholesalers or whatever it is, right, and you're just going out pointing everything and not being respectful or trying to connect, like you said, hey, how long have you lived in Elgin? Oh yeah, I remember when it was this, and this. Right. That's the right way. That's perfect. Yeah. Versus, oh man, this is horrible in here, right? Because then you're like attacking their ego and pride and everything, Yeah.
Well, yeah, and again, we use the term motivated seller as a kind of a wide net, but in some situations, and I know a lot of people. I want to touch on this. A lot of people don't understand why somebody would sell their house for, let's say, 50 cents on the dollar, or half of what it potentially could sell for on the open market. Being a real estate broker for the last 13 years. I have other brokers that have gotten into arguments with me saying that, what a wholesaler does, for example, is some type of like a scam or, a hurtful action against a motivated seller. And I actually think that it's quite the opposite. I mean, the people that are out there that are selling these houses for, we'll call it for whatever the discounted amount is, whether it's based on condition or the time element of, that they need to sell in. I need to sell cash in 3 weeks, whatever the situation is. They're very conscious of their situation, and a lot of times they've got something else going on in the background that really motivates them truly and creates that distress that puts them in that place where they say, hey man, just give me the $50,000 and I'm happy. And I have had people walk away from I shouldn't say walk away in a negative way, sit down at a closing table and sign away on those HUDs, ecstatic that they were actually able to dispose of this property that maybe they had owned for, the last 10 years or 20 years. Maybe they couldn't afford to pay the taxes on it anymore. Whatever it is, it's just been a burden to them. And that relief, to watch that relief hit them when they sign off on those closing documents and walk out of there with a smile. That's the real game, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I don't think that enough people are out there understanding how this end of the business works. And there might be some wholesalers out there that are trying to, let's say, take advantage of people, but let's be realistic. I mean, let's just put it this way, how many times let's bring this to the listeners, you get a postcard in the mail or you get a yellow letter in the mail. How many times have you actually opened up that letter from somebody you don't know who it's from, whether it's handwritten or not? You've read the letter, you've taken the next step to actually dial the phone up and call the phone number to speak to whoever it is that says, I want to buy your house for cash, or whatever that message is that's on that letter. I mean, these people have an internal motivation to sell these properties. So I just wanted to hit that point.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with you, Joe. And I think, so sometimes I think of the same thing. You're right. I think the majority of wholesalers, we do a great job. And I got the same stories you do, right, where they're ecstatic, they're giving you a hug at closing.
Right.
Just like in any industry, right? Like you're a great realtor, hardworking. There's probably a lot of realtors that are really lazy, and right, so they see that and they get pissed off. But it's like,
sure,
but like, or maybe they're not doing the best job and they're not doing the best thing, just like a wholesaler, right? So there's probably 10 to 20% that are just lazy, maybe probably more. So I think the thing there is we're not for everyone, right? So like a realtor, like let's say a typical realtor that just lists it, yeah. So for 8 or 9 out of 10 sellers, you're actually more appropriate. We're not even trying to convince a lot of sellers that we're right for them. What we're right for is like in the situation you mentioned, hey, I need to close in 3 weeks, or, I'm losing my house to taxes in 2 weeks. Can you make this happen at X price? Yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
Can a realtor do that? They're going to be, well, let's just list it, like it's a standard realtor, not like an investor,
No,
we can try to list it, but like, think about it. If they went that route, they'd get nothing. Whereas with us, we'll close it in a week. They, at least they get something out of it, So, but I get it. We're not appropriate for everyone. Maybe 1 out of every 20 sellers. That's what we're appropriate for. Where there's some type of motivation and a deadline, right? Like one of the questions we always ask is like, hey, what's going on in your life right now that you need to sell? And then they'll tell you, hey, this happened, divorce or whatever it is.
Right. That's a great point. Just to hammer home with. It's all about perception, I think, and for someone to go out there and just assume that there's got to be something wrong with a situation when someone's selling at a discount without actually trying to understand it first. That's where it gets frustrating on my side. So that's the message that I just want to get across is that, these properties that Mark's involved in, the properties I've purchased, the properties that other wholesalers are working on, 99% of the time, that seller is 100%, understanding what the situation is, and they wouldn't have picked up that phone and made that phone call if they didn't know they needed to get rid of a property now.
Exactly.
That's the point. So
yeah.
Before we wrap it up, I got a question about some of the things you're doing on the HUD side. Is that something we can talk about?
Sure.
Because I know you've done some HUD deals, and I know I flipped one to one of my investors a couple months back. So how does that? I just want to hear more about the actual process and the system. You don't have to get into, fine detail, but you're making offers through the HUD home store through a broker, and is there kind of a strategy on that side on how you're getting these properties under contract?
Yeah, so I think so the HUD side actually we slowed down the last 6 months.
Okay.
Before that, so whatever, like January the last year, we were pretty consistent with them, but I think if it was just inventory was down a little bit, I think I see it starting to pick up. But yeah, in essence, with flipping HUD properties, what you want to do is bid as an investor, and you're bidding against the computer, right? So you got to figure out where they're willing to accept, what percentage points, 72, 75, 78, 81. Is
that I guess that was kind of more where my question is that where you're seeing the success rate at, somewhere in like the 70 to 80% of what the asking price is?
Yeah, typically like 81. So that's why
81.
Like between January, last 6 months, it was right at like 81%.
Wow.
So it was tough there might be, a good rehab deal, but wholesalers, we need to get a little more spread so we can pass it off to our buyers. So
absolutely.
So those have been tough at 81% to find any good deals.
Sure.
So, yeah, at that point, you've got to actually close on that property. So it's a double escrow. You close on it and then resell it to, the buyer. So you get it contracted with HUD. They say, yes, we'll accept at this price. Then you got to send them paperwork, through your broker, signatures, contract, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got, 30 days to close. You can extend it, but, so that gives you time to find a buyer. So, with that strategy, what you want to do is kind of make sure that you stick in the good neighborhoods or areas where you're confident in what your buyers are paying.
Sure. Absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. Again, knowing the buyer, like you brought up in the beginning of the podcast, and being able to figure out if those numbers are going to work for them. And I know the situation when I think it was on Green Street in Carpentersville where you contacted me, and you had it under contract at one price. I went and looked at it, brought the investor that actually ended up purchasing the property. So I was kind of in the middle of that deal a little bit. I was just, we didn't co-wholesale, but it was kind of like CoMarketing, for example. And, the price initially wasn't really there. And then I remember telling you, it's a little too high. It needs to come down like, I don't remember the numbers, but we'll call it 10 grand. And then I think a month or two went by and you were able to actually get it down to that price point. I think by letting the contract expire and then rebidding on it again at a lower price, maybe.
Yeah, so great point. So in that situation, so that's great advice too. So let's say you've got a HUD contract, you think you'll be able to sell it for whatever reason, it's too highly priced and you can't. So in that situation, I brought you out, I got your feedback, and then I knew, all right, I thought it was going to be at this, but now I know Joe's at this price.
Right.
So then I watched it like a hawk until it came down, and then we bid on it again, and I said, hey, Joe, guess what? It's at your price. But most people, I think, would give up after the first time. They're like, oh, I lost a 500 earnest or whatever it was. I'm not going to move on. But I said, you know what? I know he's at this price. I know you buy, right, because you bought him before, so I know you're serious. So that gave me confidence. Right. And we bid on it again. So
yeah, and
so
that one actually went to another investor that I work with. We'll call it a client, but kind of one of I call them my back pocket buyers. You know, these guys that pay cash, and probably the same guys that you've got some interaction with. And I can't, because I work for HUD as a listing broker, I can't actually physically close on or buy or own any type of HUD property, at least while I'm in that contract with the government. I'd hate to pass up an opportunity for another one of my investors. So when you contacted me, I was out there, I think, within a day or two, and we worked out the deal. And you're right, the price came down to where the investor was interested in purchasing, and they closed the deal within, a couple weeks.
Yeah,
so
and it's a great job on your behalf. Like you mentioned, you can't close on it. You create awesome goodwill by, presenting it to your buyer, right? Because then he's going to, in the future, he's going to be like, man, thank God for Joe. He brought me this good deal. And then he might bring you a good deal or a good lender or what, you know what I mean? So it always comes back.
It's always about relationships, absolutely.
That's it, yeah.
Let's start wrapping it up. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about what you're doing or I know your company's Festival Properties. We didn't mention that. I'll put it in the intro again. But anything else you want to add before we get to my final question or two?
No, I think that's it. Anyone listening out there, like I said, so I got a blog called www.focusonbuyers.com. So if you need help, with launching, exploding, building that army, what I call that mobilized buyers list, that, you get a property and you're confident that, hey, I know, Joe or this X buyer is going to take this. Let me know. Hit me up. We've got a little mini mastermind there on exploding buyers lists across the country. So I think focus on that. Focus on the buyers list, right? Dig your well before you're thirsty.
I like it. So it's www.focusonbuyers.com, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so is that the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
Yeah, go there. All my contact info is there. Send me an email, and we can connect there.
Last question. Any type of educational piece you can recommend, whether it be a book, podcast, YouTube, video you follow, or anything like that?
I've been reading The One Thing.
Yeah. Me too.
That's a really good one. That's a really good one for the second time, right? Because I think some of these books you read for a couple times.
Sure.
So that's a really good one. And then the other thing, James Altucher, he's got a good blog out there. What I really like about his specifically is his daily practice of writing down 10 ideas a day. It's a game changer for anyone listening. And it's tough, believe me. But so the whole idea is you want to write 10 ideas a day, right? It could be business, personal, whatever it is, right? Like these got to be like, just a quick example, right? So we went out to, my wife and I went to eat at Outdoor Cafe, like a Persian restaurant last Sunday. It was like 90 degrees, right? So you're sitting there and you're like sweating, right? Mm-hmm. And I know it already exists, but we were having hot soup and I was telling Marion, I'm like, we should invent something, or there already is, but like a cold or a moderate temperature soup. And I know there's some out there, right? But I'm thinking, but it's just because I'm thinking of writing 10 ideas down. So I wrote that down. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with it, but like, it's like a muscle, right? Just like you work out. So the whole idea, like for business, right? Mm-hmm. Do the same thing. All right. How can I mastermind 10 ideas on how I can grow my business, right? So shut everything off and just think, all right, bird's eye view, like what are 10 ideas I can do? So this could go for anything, right? Like working out, personal, with your wife, what are ideas, vacation ideas, or just business ideas, new launches. So that's been working really cool lately for me.
I actually completely agree with that. And I've never heard, I've heard of James Altucher, but I haven't really followed what he's doing. But that writing down of ideas, whether it's 10 a day or things that I'm more of the mindset, like things that kind of come to your brain, because I'm the type of guy where I'll be driving down the road and all of a sudden, bing, the light bulb goes off and I'll think, oh, you know what, I gotta get a hold of Mark today because there's this one opportunity. I think one of his guys that he knows might want to buy this property. And if I don't jot it down or record it on like my voice recorder on my phone, 20 seconds later, I'm going through a green light and I'm thinking, what was I just thinking about?
Yeah.
So
I know.
just for the sheer fact of recording your thoughts, I think it's important to put down 10 ideas. I love that idea. I'm gonna start.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start.
100% agree. Yeah.
All right, Mark. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. This was actually a great call, just very informal discussion on how things work for you, and I appreciate the time you've taken to meet with me today. And you know what? I look forward to seeing you at the next meetup group or the next time we get together.
Joe, appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and for sure, great message you're sending out here.
Thank you. Talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
Joe.
All right.
Yep, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Investor Empowerment Series radio show. Be sure to tune in next week for another empowering episode. We welcome your feedback, so please rate us on iTunes and Stitcher, and visit us at www.investorempowermentchicago.com or tannisgrouprealty.com.